I just know, I've got a gut instinct, there's something shady going on with this Keir Starmer appointing Sue Gray to be his Labour Chief of Staff. Now, I was listening to him while he was on the Nick Ferrari breakfast show on LBC yesterday, and Nick Ferrari asked him a pretty simple question. When did you approach Sue Gray and ask her to become your Chief of Staff? And he couldn't answer. He tied himself up in knots. He would not give the date or the time when he asked Sue Gray to work for him. Instead, it was, I've done nothing improper. I've been looking for someone to be my Chief of Staff for a while now, and he just wouldn't give the date. Why that is, I don't know. Well, I've got an inkling. And you know as well as I do, when politicians skirt around a question as far as they can and refuse to answer it, you know something's up. Now, if you don't know who Sue Gray is, she was the apparently impartial civil servant who was tasked with investigating the Tory party and Boris Johnson in particular over so-called Partygate. And if you don't know what Partygate was, well, it's when people who happened to work with each other under the same roof in Downing Street got together and had a slice of cake. Now, I'm not defending Boris Johnson whatsoever, but this whole Sue Gray Labour Party Keir Starmer business, it's shady, it stinks. Now, the hysterical, woke, lefty, progressive Twitter mob, they were all cock-a-hoop when they found out Sue Gray was going to be investigating Boris Johnson. And just for context here, Sue Gray is an unelected civil servant. Why on earth someone like her was picked to do this instead of someone who was democratically elected? It just baffles me. That's another alarm bell, if you ask me. And trying to find an impartial civil servant working in Parliament, government, Downing Street, or anywhere in authority these days is like finding a needle in a haystack. If you ask me, they are power-hungry little zealots who are quite up themselves. So anyway, Sue Gray investigated Boris Johnson in Downing Street, and the result was quite tame, because everyone, myself included, the mainstream media, the woke, outrage, hysterical Twitter mob, they expected Sue Gray to find them all guilty and Boris Johnson to resign immediately. But that didn't happen. It just kind of quietly went away. And now, months later, she's been chosen to be Keir Starmer's Labour Chief of Staff. Now, what stinks about this whole story for me is Keir Starmer's complete refusal to answer Nick Ferrari and say when he approached Sue Gray to be his Chief of Staff. Now, to me, this suggests he asked her before the investigation into Boris Johnson and so-called Partygate. And if this is the case, then it does really suggest that there was some kind of plot going on. And if that fact doesn't convince you, then how's about this? Sue Gray's son is a Labour Party activist, and he was heard apparently boasting to other activists on the doorstep saying he was Sue Gray's son and that she had carried out the Partygate probe and that he was being groomed for a safe Labour seat. Now, all this suggests to me Labour asked Sue Gray to be Chief of Staff. She was then asked to do the probe into so-called Partygate. Keir Starmer and Sue Gray kept that quiet until this year, hoping people wouldn't put two and two together. Keir Starmer also admitted on the LBC breakfast show with Nick Ferrari that he knew Sue Gray during his time in the CPS, or the Crime Prosecution Service. So make of that what you will. I know what I make of it. I think it really was a left-wing Labour Party plot to oust Boris Johnson, and the civil service in this country needs reforming root and stem. They're not elected officials, they have no power, they have no mandate. They are there to work for the people whom we elect. So it's not just Parliament that I think needs reform, it's the whole business, it's the whole shebang. You're talking councils, authorities, everything, everywhere. And before you ask, no, I'm not voting for anyone at the next general election. I know there are people on social media who are so desperate now to get rid of the Tories, especially since the Matt Hancock WhatsApp messages, that they are willing to vote Labour just to get Tories out. But I will never vote Labour, ever. I would rather fight a socialist government rather than vote for one. And as for the Reform Party, I think the leader, Richard Tice, and his deputy, Dr. David Bull, I think they're both very duplicitous. Remember, they were all for mandatory jabs during the lockdown. So there we go. That's my opinion. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. And until the next time, have a great day. Look after yourselves, and Roger Trout.